I do want to talk about Pat Hughes. If the Cubs hadn't won 3 of 4 and we were all down in the dumps or something like that, we would have started with Pat Hughes. So my apologies to Pat. He deserves to lead, but we have to defer to the baseball team, I think. Pat Hughes
he would want you to do that too, by the way.
Yes, he would have.
Yeah.
Yes, he's selfless like that.
Yeah.
Pat Hughes inducted into the Hall of Fame on Saturday. I have spoken at length in podcasts in the past about what he has meant to me as a Cubs fan, really as a person and a baseball fan. But in short, I used to take an AM radio to middle school and listen on the bus, in my locker, in class, and that was how I developed into the Cubs fan in front of you today. Like a lot of people my age, I fell in love with the 2003 Chicago Cubs, and this is before MLB TV. It wasn't on TV at school or at summer camp, and so I had an AM radio, and at the time it was 720 WGN with Pat Hughes and Ron Santo. And listening to them call the game the way they describe the game, that is why I am the fan that I am today. And Pat Hughes receiving the honor that he did on Saturday, nobody deserves that more. He is one of the best in the history of the game. He's the GOAT, and I couldn't be happier for someone that I do not know to have received that honor. And I just want to read one quote of his. Again, I could do a 3-hour podcast on what Pat Hughes means to me alone. I've tweeted about it. I'm happy to elaborate at other times, but it's a Sunday and we have a bit of a time limit. So I do just want to read this quote from his speech. You can watch the whole speech. I believe it was on Marquee. The Cubs have tweeted links to it. If you can't find it, I'm happy to share it with you because I love Pat Hughes that much. But Pat, in a sort of letter to Cubs fans in his speech, said this, quote, "What an extraordinary group of people you are. I want to thank you so much for your unbelievable passion for the club and your support of me. When I got the call from Cooperstown last December, I truly think there were some Cubs fans who were just as happy as I was with the news." I think he's talking about me specifically, like just me. "You make me feel like I'm part of your family. You invite me to special events like graduations, bar mitzvahs, and birthdays, and I absolutely love those games at Wrigley Field, those close ball games where you fans are not just part of the ballpark atmosphere, but you become part of the ball game itself, and you play a significant role in a dramatic Cubs victory. It has been my extreme privilege to be one of your announcers for these past 3 decades, and before my career ends, I hope I get at least one more chance to say something like the Chicago Cubs win the World Series." Brendan, Pat, he's talking about Ron Santo. The whole thing, I was an emotional wreck. As Anthony Rizzo once said in the dugout as the Cubs were about to win the World Series, I was in a glass case of emotion. I love Pat Hughes. He is the best to ever do it, and nobody deserves to be in the Hall of Fame more than Pat Hughes.
Man, yeah, that speech. Like I've already watched it like 3 times, but like, for me and you, it's been reverse. I grew up watching a TV broadcast mostly. Like I would just like skip, recess and watch the games on my computer. So it's been reverse where over the past 5-10 years, a lot of the start of the games, I'm listening to Pat Hughes, and now I'm listening to him more often. And for me, like the consistency of Pat is it's like a warm blanket. You can always go to it. You have bad days, you have good days, but specifically on the bad days, I know 1:20 p.m., Pat Hughes is on the radio. I can forget whatever's on my mind, right?
Yep.
And so you can't thank him enough for having that consistency, man. And the speech, hearing him give his selfless accolades to all those around him, it just speaks volume to who he is, man. I hope Pat is around forever. That's where I come down to.
Yeah. Not surprising that he just spends most of the speech thanking other people, because that's just the kind of guy that Pat Hughes is and has been throughout his career. But we'll end there. He said, the Cubs fans make him feel like part of a family, but I've always said that about him. When you listen to him broadcast games, you don't feel like you're listening to some stranger who works for a baseball team. You feel like you have been invited into his living room and you are all living and dying with each pitch, and somebody really understands what it means to be a fan of the Chicago Cubs.